Hi, today I want to talk to you about this book, Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman is one of my favourite authors, and you can see the book has had a bit of wear and tear. And I really love this book as an audiobook as well. It was a while ago since I listened to it, so I can't remember if he read the book himself or someone else did it. Gosh, what's on this book? Must have spilled something on it. So, yeah, the cover is amazing. It's got all these stars and this hammer is amazing. It's got this metallic shine and you can see it's a bit dusty. So at the back of it says, "Before the beginning there was nothing, no earth, no heavens, no stars, no sky, only the mist world, formless and shapeless, and the fire world, always burning. From the dawn of the world to the twilight of the gods, this is a dazzling retelling of the Great North." Great North. I'll read that again. This is a dazzling retelling of the great Norse myths from the award-winning best-selling Neil Gaiman. This is what the Times said about it. One of the joys of reading Gaiman is how he subverts our expectations of magic, horror, fantasy, and the mundane. Right, the back of it looks like this. This is the spine, super shiny, metallic gold, and it's kind of yellowish on the sides, or maybe it's just so I had it for a while. And inside it's all yellow. I'll read the blurb really quickly, what it says on the inside. The North, the North. I keep saying the North. These are really hard words to pronounce. Like some letters together are harder to say. The Norse myths are woven into the fabric of our storytelling, from the novels of Tolkien to the worlds of comics and superheroes. They are also an inspiration for Neil Gaiman's own award-winning, best-selling fiction. Now Gaiman reaches back through time to the original source of stories in an epic and electrifying retelling of the great Norse myths. Thrilling tales of dwarfs and frost giants, of treasures and magic, and of Asgard, home to the gods. Odin the All-Father, highest and oldest of the gods, his mighty son Thor, whose hammer, I don't know if I can pronounce this, Mjolnir, maybe, was forged by dwarfs that makes the mountain giants tremble. Loki, wily and handsome, reliably unreliable in his lusts, and Freya, more beautiful than the sun or the moon, who gives short shrift to the gods. Giants and ogres who seek to control her. Gaiman's gods are thoroughly alive in the page, irascible, visceral, playful, passionate, as he leads us from the beginning of everything to Ragnarok, the inescapable final downfall of the gods. I have to charge my laptop. 1 second. I'm back. Okay. Oh, I'm trying to touch my face, but it's so hard. Okay, back to this. Okay, so the book is published by Bloomsbury, and it's 20 quid. Right. I might read you a little bit of this. I think you might like. If you're probably a regular with this book is out already. Right. Uh, so, before he starts into the stories, he names the players. The players. So there's like an introduction at the beginning, which I think was quite good. See how long this is. It's a few pages. I'll read it to you to make up for me disappearing to charge my laptop. Okay. It's as hard to have a favorite sequence of myths as it is to have a favorite style of cooking. Some nights you might want Thai food, some nights sushi, other nights you favor the plain home cooking you grew up on. But if I had to declare a favorite, it would probably be the Norse myths. My first encounter with Asgard and its inhabitants was as a small boy, no more than 7, reading the adventures of the mighty Thor, as depicted by American comics artist Jack Kirby, and stories plotted by Kirby and Stan Lee, and dialogue by Stan Lee's brother Larry Lieber. I love Thor. I think he's one of my favorite characters. Kirby's Thor was powerful and good-looking. His Asgard was a towering science-fictional city of imposing buildings and dangerous edifices. His Odin wise and noble, his Loki a sardonic horn-helmeted creature of pure mischief. I love Kirby's blonde hammer-wielding Thor, and I wanted to learn more about him. Me too. I borrowed a copy of Myths of the Norsemen by Roger Lancelyn Green and read and reread it with delight. And puzzlement. Asgard in this telling was no longer a Kirby-esque future city, but was a Viking hall and collection of buildings out on the frozen wastes. Odin, the All-Father, was no longer gentle, wise, and irascible, but instead he was brilliant, unknowable, and dangerous. Thor was just as strong as the mighty Thor in the comics. His hammer was powerful, but he was, well, honestly, not the brightest of the gods, and Loki was not evil. Although he was certainly not a force for good, Loki was complicated. In addition, I learned the Norse gods came with their own doomsday, Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, the end of it all. The gods were the gods were going to battle the frost giants, who were all going to die. Had Ragnarok happened yet? Was it still to happen? I did not know then. I am not certain now. It was the fact that the world and the story ends, and the way that it ends and is reborn, that made the gods and the frost giants and the rest of them tragic heroes, tragic villains. Ragnarok made the Norse world linger for me, seem strangely present and current, while other better documented systems of belief felt as if they were part of the past old things. The Norse myths are the myths of a chilly place, with long, long winter nights and endless summer days. Myths of a people who did not entirely trust or even like their gods, although they respected and feared them. As best as we can tell, the gods of Asgard came from Germany, spread into Scandinavia, and then out into the parts of the world dominated by the Vikings, into Orkney and Scotland, Ireland and the north of England, where the invaders left places named for Thor or Odin. In English, the gods have left their names in our days of the week. You can find Tyr, the one-handed Odin's son, Odin, Thor, and Frigg, the queen of the gods, in respectively Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We can see the traces of older myths and older religions in the war and the stories of the truce between the gods of the Vanir and Es and Aesir. The Vanir appear to have been good-natured gods, brothers and sisters, less warlike, but perhaps no less dangerous than the Aesir. It's very likely, or at least a workable hypothesis, that there were tribes of people who worshipped the Vanir and other tribes who worshipped the Aesir, and that the Aesir worshippers invaded the lands of the Vanir worshippers, and that they made promises and accommodations. Gods of the Vanir, like the sinister and brother Freya and Frey, live in Asgard with the Aesir. History and religion and myth combine, and we wonder and we imagine and we guess, like detectives, reconstructing the details of a long-forgotten crime. There are so many Norse stories we do not have, so much we do not know. All we have are some myths that have come to us in the form of folk tales, in retellings, in poems, in prose. They were written down when Christianity had already displaced the worship of the Norse gods, and some of the stories we have came to us because people were concerned that if the stories were not preserved, some of the kennings, the usages of poets that refer to events and specific myths, would become meaningless. Freya's tears, for example, was a poetic way of saying gold. In some of the tales, the Norse gods are described as men or as kings or heroes of old, so that the stories could be told in a Christian world. Some stories and poems tell of other stories or imply other stories that we simply do not have. It is perhaps as if the only tales of the gods and demigods of Greece and Rome that had survived were of the deeds of Theseus and Hercules. We have lost so much. There are so many gods, I know I'm putting you through this, I'm sorry. There's not much left, so. There are many Norse goddesses. We know their names and some of their attributes and powers, but the tales, myths, and rituals have not come down to us. I wish I could retell the tales of Eir, because she was the doctor of the gods, the Lofin, the comforter, who was Norse goddess of marriages, or of Strofn, a goddess of love, not to mention Vor, goddess of wisdom. I can imagine stories, but I cannot tell their tales. They are lost or buried or forgotten. I've tried my best to retell these myths and stories as accurately as I can and as interestingly as I can. Sometimes details in the stories contradict each other, but I hope that they paint a picture of a world and a time. As I sorry drink. How are you doing? Hope you're okay. How are you holding up in this quarantine? Let me know in the comments. If you want me to tell any specific tales, read a specific book, or recommend one, let me know and I'll definitely make a video on that. As I retold these myths, I tried to imagine myself a long time ago in the lands where these stories were first told. During the long winter nights perhaps, under the glow of the northern lights, or sitting outside in the small hours, awake in the unending daylight of midsummer, with an audience of people who wanted to know what else Thor did, and what the rainbow was, and how to live their lives, and where bad poetry comes from. I was surprised when I finished the stories and read them as a sequence to find that they felt like a journey, from the ice and the fire that the universe began in, to the fire and the ice that end the world. Along the way we meet people who would know if you met them. People like Loki and Thor and Odin, and people we want to know so much more about. My favorite of these is Angrboda, Loki's wife among the giants, who gives birth to his monstrous children, and who is there in ghost form after Balder is slain. I did not dare to go back to the tellers of Norse myth whose work I had loved, to people like Roger Lancelin Green and Kevin Crossley Holland, and reread their stories. I spent my time instead with the many different translations of Snorri, St- these names honestly, Snorri Sturluson's Prose Edda, and with the verses of the Poetic Edda words. Sorry, I'm going to go back a bit. Speeding up too fast. And with the verses of the Poetic Edda, words of 900 years ago and before, picking and choosing what tales I had to retell and how I wanted to tell them, blending versions of myths from the prose and from the poems. Thor's visit to Hymir, for example. The way I tell it here is a hybrid. It begins in the Poetic Edda, then adds details of Thor's fishing adventure from Snorri's version. If I mispronounce any of these words or names, please let me know how to pronounce them correctly so that I can next time. But I'll try my best, so I shall carry on. My battered copy of a Dictionary of Northern Mythology by Rudolf Simek, translated by Angela Hall, was always invaluable, continually consulted, eye-opening and informative. Huge thanks to my old friend Alyssa Whitney for her editorial assistance. She was a fabulous sounding board, always opinionated and forthright, helpful, sensible, and smart. She got this book written mostly by wanting to read the next story, and she helped me make the time to write it in. I'm incredibly grateful to her. Thank you to Stephanie Montier, whose eagle eyes and Norse knowledge caught several things I might have missed. Thanks also to Amy Cherry at Norton, who suggested that I might want to retell some myths at a lunch on my birthday 8 years ago, and who has been, all things considered, the most patient editor in the world. All mistakes, conclusions jumped to, and odd opinions in this volume are mine and mine alone, and I would not wish anyone else blamed for them. I hope I've retold these stories honestly, but there was still joy and creation in in the telling. That's the joy of myths. The fun comes in telling them yourself, something I warmly encourage you to do. You person reading this, I would. You person reading this, read the stories in this book, then make them your own, and on some dark, icy winter's evening, or on a summer night when the sun will not set, tell your friends what happened when Thor's hammer was stolen, or how Odin obtained the mead of poetry for the gods. Neil Gaiman, Listen Grove, London, May 2016. That's 4 years ago. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope I haven't butchered it too much. It's been nearly 20 minutes in this video. So, it's a pretty good book, especially during these times when we're in quarantine. Since I love Thor so much, I might read you his description of Thor, and then I will let you go. You won't suffer me trying to pronounce these words. Thor. Thor, Thor, Odin's son, is the Thunderer. He is straightforward, where his father Odin is cunning, good-natured, where his father is devious. Huge he is, and red-bearded and strong, by far the strongest of all the gods. His might is increased by his belt of strength, magnitude. When he when he wears it, his strength is doubled. Thor's weapon is sorry. I attempt this again. Thor's weapon is Mjolnir, a remarkable hammer forged for him by dwarves. Its story you will learn. Trolls and frost giants and mountain giants all tremble when they see Mjolnir, for it has killed so many of their brothers and friends. Thor wears iron gloves, which help him to grip the hammer's shaft. Thor's mother was Jord, the earth goddess. Thor's sons are Modi the angry and Magni the strong. Thor's daughter is Thrud the powerful. His wife is Sif of the golden hair. She had a son, Ur, before she married Thor, and Thor is Ur's stepfather. Ur is a god who hunts with bow and with arrows, and he is the god with skis. God of skis. Thor is the defender of Asgard and of Midgard. There are many stories about Thor and his adventures. You will encounter some of them here. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this in some way. I kind of have a little bit, at least talking about this book. And I've really enjoyed the telling of this book, especially listening to it on Audible. And if you love Audible, I think you love listening to it on there. Right, I'm gonna let you go. Bye.